What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into the college football breakdown. Week 7. We've missed a couple weeks here. I didn't want to miss really any, but hey, that's how life goes. So got DOB here ready to go through all the games for Saturday's main slate. Getting out a little earlier than we have been. So how you feeling tonight, DOB?
That's good. I had kind of a interesting week at work and ready to get after it this weekend. Relax, play some college football. We got MMA, hockey's back, MLB, playoffs. So let's get after it.
Yeah, so we've got, before we get into things, be sure to check out the description of the video. Got a link to all of our content that you'll see us sharing here with our sheet. And then also we've got a partnership right now for a 15% off discount with Ship It Nation. They've hooked us up with that. You can also get a free week trial if you use the links and the code Jaeger15 in the description of the video as well. So be sure to check them out. They've got college football content as well. Nice to mesh those two together. So let's hop right in. We got one of the best overall Saturdays of the year with what we got Saturday night. Of course, on the night slate, you got Oregon, Ohio State.
Let's go.
Pretty big one there. We'll go through the main slate here. We're going to go game by game. Talk through each spot here, and then we'll look at our stack sheet like we do. We'll give our favorite low-owned stack, maybe a favorite low-owned individual play, and then we'll get out of here. I'll have rankings and cores up either late tonight or early in the morning. So let's get into it. We got South Carolina and Alabama, first game up. South Carolina's 21.5-point, 3-touchdown dog on the road against a mad Alabama team, I guess, in a 51 total coming off the loss to Vandy. What do you got here, DOB?
Yeah, I don't want to be in the way of a mad Alabama team after getting kind of embarrassed after taking that L there. South Carolina, I don't have any interest in. I could definitely get talked into playing these Bama guys. All sides of it. I mean, Milroe kind of priced up, but I think people will be wanting to go to them after, oh, hey, this big team just got, worked. They're going to be, kind of pissed off. Let's play them. So they might be coming in more higher owned than usual, even with their price tags, but not top priority for me, no.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be super interested in this one at all. I think you could always play Milroe, but I think there's a lot more, quarterbacks that I want to play personally that are much cheaper. 10-8's a tough tag for me.
Yeah.
And, the rest of these receivers, I love what I'm seeing out of Ryan Williams. But now he's 7,400. You got Jeremy is now dropped down to 48. I guess you could go there, but I haven't really liked him all year. That's really all I've got for them. The backfield's just split. On the other side, Sellers is a runner. He's only 5,400. I mean, Vandy did all right, but like you said, I don't really want to step in to this Bama team really right now. So I'll probably stay away from that.
Yeah, I mean, Bernard, cheap receiver, could play him. But Rocket, I'm not into this game at all. After looking at it, it's a high spread. Game total is 51, very lopsided. I mean, if I landed on one of them, cool, but not top priority.
Yeah, I agree. We got Wake Forest and Clemson. Pretty good total here. One of the bigger ones on the slate. 3 touchdown about favorites for Clemson on the road, projected for over 40. And really don't discount Wake. I mean, they're actually projected for almost 3 touchdowns, which is a little surprising. Although there's not really anybody that I'm enthused to ever play on Wake. I don't think I'm going to get to anybody, honestly, on that side. On the Clemson side, Maffa is only 6,500. That's just a stupid price tag. Clemson's going to get some ownership. Maffa is going to be massive chalk, but I don't really see how he fails here with the volume that he's getting. I mean, I say that and he'll break his leg or something, but the receivers are fairly cheap, all 5K or under. Klubnik's looked all right, actually. He's running a little more, 9K for him. I think you could play him. But what do you got here? What's your thoughts, and how are you planning on attacking Clemson?
I mean, you kind of hit a lot of the nails on the head there. I will add, we used Taylor Morin a little bit. He's about the only one I would play for Wake. Brittingstool, Westco, Williams are definitely in play. They're cheap, even though it's supposed to be a blowout. So Maffa should get you there with that price tag easily. If you wanted to take a shot on one of the backups, if you think it's going to be complete blowout, 3 touchdown, favorite, maybe Haynes. Wouldn't be the worst thing. But I think we found some value plays later that, we'll keep in touch with the injury report and stuff. But yeah, Maffa, I'm not getting the Klubnik. Just still not sold for him, or with him at that 9,000 price tag. But Maffa, definitely just lock him in 6,500 and then go from there.
Yeah, Wake's not got a good run defense at all, so I'm going to lean to him and probably just try to get different elsewhere. 6,500 is just ridiculous. If you look at our player rush attempts, we've got this for the targets and then the rush attempts by team, so you can kind of see how that's been trending. 25 carries for Maffa last week. Who was that against? That was against a decent team. I can't remember. Can look that up because he hadn't got anything like that, but he's been the lead guy by far for them all year. And then he popped for 25 carries and just got every bit of the work there last week. Let's see, that was against Florida State. They won 29-13, so not a decent team, but we'll go with that. Yeah, that's about all I've got. I think you can play the pass game as a pivot, but Maffa is going to be a priority for me there.
Just lock him in. Yep.
Georgia Tech, North Carolina, really good total here. The North Carolina defense, 60.5 total. Georgia Tech's favored by 6. The North Carolina defense has been – I mean, they gave up 70 to JMU. They might have looked a little better there last week. But, man, I think you got to have interest in Georgia Tech as a favorite here. I think you can play Haynes King. I think you can play Jamal Haynes. I think you can play one of these receivers, either one of them with Haynes King. I think you can get to any of them. On the other side, the Georgia Tech pass defense has not been good, so I think you could run it back with a J.J. Jones or Bryson Nesbitt. Hampton gets tons of work in the backfield. He's 8,900 though, so tough price tag. That's kind of what we're talking about with Maffa is like Hampton's getting probably a little more work, but not a lot. And 65 versus 8,900 is just crazy. So what do you think here? You got any favorites in this game? I think it could be stacked up.
Definitely viable for a game stack and should be kind of a priority to get a piece of either side, if not both, in cash games. GPP would definitely look into multiple stack of the tech side. Just kind of could see a shootout here. What do we have?
Just as a note on Pro Football Focus,
60 and a half, yeah.
On the slate, these two defenses are second and third worst overall rated defense per PFF. So, and Wake Forest in the last game was the worst. So, definitely could see this thing shoot out. King's got legs. He can do a lot with his legs. One of these receivers could pop off anytime. I wanted to see how their targets have been shaken out. They're kind of nobody is really they're very similar to me. Rutherford had 10 last week targets. Singleton had 7.
That's the only two.
They were 8 and 7. They're very, very similar plays.
I mean, if it's going to be a shootout in kind
53 and 55 is way too cheap.
20 max, I kind of have interest in this Criswell quarterback. I mean, he's going to have to be throwing. Everyone's going to go to Marion. If they focus on stacking the box and shutting down him, you pair up Criswell and either Nesbitt or JJ. I mean, they're going to be super low owned. That'll definitely get you different and kind of a high upside there. Not a bad projection of 11 and 11.8. So,
yeah. So if you look at the North Carolina targets, Nesbitt and Jones have been okay, but actually, I think over Jones, I would prefer Nate McCollum, who I can't remember exactly. I think he was coming off of injury early in the year. He only had 1 and 1 target the first 3 weeks. Last week, he had 13 targets, popped up to 2. And, some people aren't going to see something like that.
Lock him in. Yeah, lock him in.
4,600, I think that's a really good play. Nice run back. Nesbitt's only 35. I think he's the tight end. I could be wrong, but I think he's the tight end.
We've played worse.
Well, I played him last week, I think, on whatever slate they were on. I'm pretty sure I played Nesbitt. But yeah, you can get out of this game for cheap if without Hampton. King 81, that's fine. The 2 receivers for Georgia Tech are under 55, and then McCollum's 46.
And that's how you get different off of Maffa.
Yeah, I think I really like this game. So,
yep.
Next one is one we're not going to hardly spend. I don't think hardly any time on. Iowa 3-point favorite, 42 total against Washington. Really, I don't have interest anywhere. You could take a flyer on Caleb Johnson, who has looked really good this year. Better than I would have expected with some of the stuff that he's getting massive work, which we're not used to with him. But 8,300 is a tough tag. Denzel Boston's been a touchdown machine for them. He's 7,700 against a decent defense. So I don't really like anybody here. You could take a flyer on maybe one of those 2. But
that's about the only 2 that I would speak of. We'll keep moving on, and honestly, the next game.
Actually, we got one play we love. We were talking pre-show. We got it.
Yeah, so we got the running backs pinned down, but let's go ahead.
So Wisconsin, Rutgers. Rutgers is a 1.5-point favorite, 44 total. So not, probably not a ton of interest anywhere. in the game other than Tawee Walker is not the guy who I was talking about, but he's only 5,300 still and should be the lead guy yet again. He was pretty solid last week. In terms of workload after the injuries around him, last week he took 19 carries with no Ches Malusi. I'm thinking he's out again. Am I right on that?
I don't see Ches in.
He's not feeding into projections. So
Mm-mm.
I think Walker is a really good option there at only 53. When you're looking at the rush defense, I will say, where was the other one? Where is Rutgers? Rutgers is the 9th worst on the slate, so they're not great, run D either. But the other side, Wisconsin is one of the worst on the slate, 3rd worst run D on the slate per Pro Football Focus. And you got Monangai, who gets massive work. Isn't going to be super owned, I don't think, either. I mean, sub 15%. 7,600, I think that's a fair tag. So Monangai, I'm really interested in him. He continued to get
You go Monangai or Maffa and Cash and just get different elsewhere.
Yeah. 19, 25, 26, 27 carries the last 4 games. 19. I mean, he's just getting every bit of it. You might see Samuel Brown like at the goal line. He does vulture from that Tech game. I remember watching that one, and he slid in there randomly. But against a bad run D, I think Monangai could have a massive game. The past games I'm just off of. You got Braden Locke in now. Usually I would maybe have some interest in Pauling if Van Dyke was in there, but I'm not going anybody else other than the 2 running backs here.
Yeah. All the above and next.
Red River rivalry, Oklahoma, Texas, now in the SEC Red River rivalry. 15.5-point favorite is Texas here in an only 48.5 total. So Oklahoma is not projected for anything. Hawkins is going to be in at quarterback again. Ooh. I'm just not a fan of this Oklahoma team at all. And they run into Texas here, who looks like it's going to be Ewers back. I wish they would just play Arch. I mean, he just seems better than the plotter of Quinn Ewers, but it is what it is. The rest of this, as a DFS game, I don't have a ton of interest here. Bond looks all right. I mean, he's only 5,900. I think you can play him. Traditionally, we see tons of points in this game, but I just don't really see it here. Texas spreads it around. They got so many guys in the passing game. Bond's probably the best option, but I'm not in love with it. Jaden Blue, a couple of games ago had 25 carries. You could go to him, but even with their injuries that they have in the backfield, they still spread it out a little bit. And I don't want to play anybody from Oklahoma on first look here. So any interest for you here in this one?
0 on the Boomer Sooners. Definitely a little interest on the Texas side. You mentioned a few of them there. I'll add Gunnar Helm for 3,700. He's not the worst play for a value play to, get a piece of this action. And, Golden, he's another one there. But if you can nail down who they're going to, feature in this one, that's awesome. Play them. You'll be the only one that got it right because they're all viable and in play. So that's about
9,900 for Quinn Ewers is like the most absurd price tag I've ever seen.
Yeah, I'm not playing.
I couldn't imagine. I'm going to say that, but he'll throw for like 6 touchdowns. But I couldn't imagine clicking his name. Yeah, let's move on. Cincinnati, UCF. Here's another big mismatch per on Pro Football Focus. If you look at run defense, Cincinnati has the second worst run D on the slate. And what do we get with UCF? We get a team that runs it 68% of the time with KJ Jefferson and RJ Harvey, who just lead this team in terms of workload. Harvey, 16 carries last week. KJ had 7. The week before that, they both had 16 carries. They're not cheap, 9,200 and 8,900, but it's a great matchup. I think you got to have interest in both of these guys. Sure. And I don't see Harvey's going to get some ownership, but Jefferson's not going to get any, which is kind of crazy to me. I'm not scared of the Cincy D overall at all. The run D's bad, and I mean we were playing the Pitt passing game against them, and they ended up they were kind of slow early from that game, if I remember right. But man, they ended up getting there. Overall, they're one of the worst on the slate. They're the 7th worst rated defense on the slate. So I think Jefferson's a sneaky tournament play. I wouldn't play them together because of their price tags. I don't think both get there in like a massive game, but I've seen crazier. Kobe Hudson gets a pretty big target share. I guess you could go there, but I would probably, plan to just kind of keep it on the ground with these guys and play Jefferson naked if I'm going to.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking before. That's kind of the breakdown we had. I will mention a little bit of ownership towards this value play that Joe Royer. I think you might have played him before.
Yeah, I definitely have. Yeah.
3,400
multiple times.
3,400 still getting a decent amount of looks. And if UCF gets up early, it's not a bad position to be in for 3,400. As we just talked about, we've played worse.
Yeah, I was looking at now. It was a complete shootout with Texas Tech in Cincinnati's last game, and if you look at the and it was just kind of back and forth. They were down there towards the end. They got down a couple touchdowns, but they were chucking the ball. I mean, Connor's getting a little bit of ownership, but Henderson had 10 targets. Royer had 9. Tony Johnson and Jamoy Haynes had 8. I mean, they were just throwing it all around. Manny Covey had 6. They were chucking it.
Yeah, I mean, so that brings Sorsby in.
I can get behind a little. I can get behind a little bit of Harvey or Jefferson, and then play on the other side. Play some Royer. I don't know.
Yeah,
Sorsby might be right. I mean,
yeah, you play Harvey alone, and then run it back with, either stack Sorsby or Xavier or Royer, and then, or if you don't want to play Harvey, go KJ, pair him with either, like you said, Naked or Hudson, and then run it back with Royer for value and go from there.
And, to go along with that, who has the 6th worst pass rush on the slate? UCF. They're going to allow Sorsby to sit back there and throw. So, yeah, I can get behind maybe a little tournament shot on Sorsby. And he's got 3 rushing touchdowns on the year, too. So, around the goal line, he's not afraid to run. So, I think you can definitely do that. Henderson's not a bad shout either. I mean, he gets a big target share, transfer from Florida, 4 touchdowns on the year.
His price tag's keeping the ownership down too. So
yeah,
I like Sorsby and Henderson.
I can't really get with Connor. That would be the one I don't really like. That's getting a little bit of ownership. Yeah, no.
This next game.
Yeah, next we have Cal and Pitt, our beloved Pitt Panthers. I can say that without Josh here. Maybe he would probably choke me if I said that. But Pitt's a 3.5-point favorite. Man, we have played them all year long. We've ran them into the ground, and now look at these price tags. We got Holstein 9,700, Desmond Reed
Wow.
$9,400. He was like 4K when we started the year. And then you got the receivers who haven't really moved because they spread it around a little bit with Mumfield. I think they call him Poppy Williams, Kenny Johnson. I don't know. Let me see in terms of matchup here. I think the way that they're using Desmond Reed, I think he's like matchup proof that you could always play him.
Always.
Because, man, he is so involved in the passing game.
He's like I think
he's got like a double. He's like a Bijan Robinson.
Player.
They're almost using him like that, but he's nowhere. If you watch him, after I said that, if you actually watch him play, you're going to say I'm a complete idiot because he gets hurt like every single snap.
I was going to say within our Jaeger Boys group chat, it's everyone's favorite Taysom Hill play.
7 targets a game for a running back, 4 TDs on the year, 80 yards receiving a game. I mean, they will work him into the ground, and then he'll get hurt in the third or fourth quarter. And if he comes back, he comes back. I mean, it's kind of crazy how often he gets hurt because he's not a big guy, and they're just using him into the ground, which is good for DFS. But in terms of ownership, I mean, he is getting ownership here at 94. I think the matchup is fine to me. I don't see a problem, with this at all. Let me see on the Cal's kind of just a middle of the pack rated D overall on everything here. Yeah, I think you could definitely play these guys. Probably not my favorite spots just because of the price tags. But if you wanted to play Reed, I wouldn't hate on you for it. I don't have any interest. I can't play Cal. These guys are brutal. They spread it around in the pass game, and they're not even giving full-on work to Jaden Ott this year. So, to me, I'm out on all of Cal.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be Ott or Dyches at basically a free square.
Yeah, he is free. Yeah.
And if they get in a run and gun, he came over from Maryland, tight end. You'll hear his name next year in the NFL. He's got that level of talent. Not the worst play at 3,100.
Yeah, he's good for 4 or 5 targets a game, and he's 3,100. Yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah, I mean he's good for a touchdown and 67 yards.
Yep. Yeah, so Reed solid, even though the price tag. If you look at the top running backs, I think he's still got to be a tournament look versus RJ Harvey, who I would prefer at the very top of pricing slightly. But it's those two guys at the top. I like them more than Caleb Johnson, Hampton, Ott, Marks. Until you get down to Monangai, I like Harvey than Reed out of those top price running backs if you can get up there.
Desmond Reed, top running back on DraftKings for October 11th.
Yeah. All right, Louisville, Virginia, 54.5 total, 7-point favorites for Louisville. We talked about this one a little bit before we came on. Virginia has one of the worst run Ds on Pro Football Focus here, and you've got Isaac Brown and Donald Chaney, who look like they just split even recently. Brown is the guy who's getting most of the projection here. He's only 4,300. I think you can definitely play him. I think that's one of the better value running backs on the slate. But don't don't discount if you're playing multiple teams, 3,100 Donald Chaney, who's going to get some work and maybe even an even split against a really, really bad run D. And then you've got the pass game with Tyler Shuck, who gets, again, a very good matchup. And he's got Ja'Cory Brooks and now Colin Lacey back at only 3,900, who disappointed people a little bit last week for that tag. But I think you can go back to the pass game here. I think you could even play – this is one of those spots I wouldn't be afraid to play Shuck, Brown, or Chaney and a receiver just because of the price tag. So what are your thoughts here on the Louisville side, and then any run backs like a Malachi Fields on the other side, because the Louisville D is also not good?
Yeah, Ja'Cory definitely in play. Kind of spinning up for him, but I think he's explosive enough that he'll get you there kind of early. If Virginia, some reason, hangs around, like you said, the Malachi not really getting any ownership, and I can see why. I see some pace getting some ownership.
Yeah, so I was just looking at that while you were talking there, and I can tell you exactly why he is, and I can make a case for a fade here. 4,300 is just super cheap. If you look last week at his attempts, he had 19, and he's been trending towards the more carries. I mean, he had most all the work in this backfield, 19, 15, 11, so he's trending high. That's why he's getting ownership. But Pro Football Focus has Louisville as the best run defense on the slate per their rankings.
Gotcha.
So I would trust the defense versus UVA, who I never can get behind. So I would
coming from a Hokies fan, we understand. But yeah, Ja'Cory Brooks, Lacey, like you said, Brown. That price tag, he's got to be in play for all aspects, GPP, cash.
Listen at this interesting thought on a tournament build in like the $25 tomorrow is 1/3 to first 100K. How about a build of, and I don't know if this even would what this would truly get you because I haven't played with building yet. What if you played Brown plus Chaney against one of the worst run Ds on the slate for that total at running back, and then you could get like everything you wanted elsewhere, and you just took the one backfield for 7,400 total in one spot, basically, or in two spots.
Sure. I mean, it's definitely an option. You could either go super value at running back or super high. You got Maffa or Reed.
Because you could still play another one in the flex.
Yeah, or
if you wanted one of those other higher price running backs.
Yeah, either both of these or one of these in Monangai, Maffa, or Reed, and then make a decision on mix and matching for the other one at your other flex. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting builds going to happen tomorrow. So
yeah. All right, Stanford, Notre Dame, 23-point favorite for Notre Dame. I have not played anybody on either one of these teams except for a Minor for Stanford, and I don't think I'm going to do that here with an 11 implied total for Stanford. I'm out on this game other than that. Anything for you? Wow, Riley Leonard. Oh.
Riley, Riley or Jeremiah.
Yeah, Jeremiah's an okay price tag there.
Yeah, he's like a Maffa. I mean, for what his projection is in usage, I know Riley has to do a lot, but
Yeah, Riley's running a little more than I thought he was this year. So
Yeah, Stanford, I don't think they'll be too competitive from what I've seen. But that's why we play the
well, they
game.
just got beat by Tech, so
Yeah, exactly. So
handily.
Jeremiah, I like him a little bit more than Riley here. At a
Fourth
third of the
worst coverage on the slate, coverage defense on the slate, Stanford.
yeah, at a third of the ownership, I'll take a chance on Love there.
Yeah, yeah, I don't hate that. I'll probably stay away from the rest unless here. Let's look at. I like looking at this to see if something jumps out of a role change that is not really getting put into rankings, and it's just not. They're just still really spreading out. Although Love did get 5 targets in the pass game in their last game, so yeah, I don't hate that shout at all. Penn State, USC. This is a tough one because I don't want to play anybody against Penn State really. And then on the other side, if they could just get rid of one of these running backs, I would be in love with the other one for Penn State against a really good matchup here with the USC run D, who's 4th worst on the slate. But you just have this split that you can't really get away from. 7K, 6K is just crazy with the prices. I think I am not in on this game.
If you can get the Penn State running back right, good luck. You're ahead. They're going to come in lower owned because people are thinking the same thing.
Well, the thing that sucks is I played Allen last week and Singleton ended up not playing, and I still didn't get there with him. Yeah. That pissed me off because I got lucky that he was questionable or supposed to play. Is ultimately, I mean, he was warming up and then he didn't even play, I don't think. And if you look at their carries last week, Katron had 21 and Singleton didn't play, but they just blew out. I mean, they were just playing from ahead, I think, the whole game. And he got 21, but he never broke anything. So I don't know. It's just so I don't think I can play either one.
No real standout there for me either. We can definitely move on that one.
Yeah. BYU, undefeated BYU against Arizona, 48.5 total, 3-point favorite BYU. We were talking about this a little bit beforehand, and the Arizona run D is 5th worst on the slate. We saw last week Enoch Nwanhine got a ton of work, but Martin and Rapati are expected to return here as they've both been out since week 2. So now that kind of murks up this backfield, but they're all very cheap. If you want to take a shot somewhere, or maybe you need a late pivot for cheap or something like that, you could go to one of those guys. But if you look back early in the year at BYU, it was the first couple weeks, Rapati had 13 and Martin had 13 week 1 carries. Nwanhine didn't have anything. I don't know do you know what he did with those 19 carries in their last game?
I'm not an avid Cougar follower.
You're not.
I can't help. Well, not the team wise, but yeah, other Cougars, yes.
They beat Baylor, and Nwanhine averaged 2.7 yards per carry, so he did not earn any more with what he did there. And 19 for 51 isn't going to get you a whole lot.
Just smoke and mirrors with him. So
yeah, so I was hoping that we could play him at 3,500, but especially with the other 2 back, I think you can't do that at all. If you want to take a shot on Martin or Rapati, I think you could, but it's really risky with what kind of workload are they going to get. They're probably going to just mix it all up. Now, the rest of this game, you've got to McMillan, who is 8,500, just a stud, just gets tons of work. And in the pass game on the other side, Lassiter is only 4,200, which is pretty cheap for him. And if you look at BYU's targets, he had 13 their last game. He had another game this year with 10. So I think you got to have some interest in him at only 4,200. McMillan, I mean, just massive work for him always. 15, 11, 14 targets. Tough to get there, I think. Of course, again, haven't played, but I think it will be tough to get to that play at 8,500. But anything that really sticks out to you here, other than that, I don't think I have any interest in this game, really.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the backfield on BYU before. Otherwise, McMillan, 8,500. Is he?
I mean, it's probably fair. It's just
he is the top one. Okay, all right. So he is the top one on the slate. Man, you could go stars and studs on this one with running backs, receivers, however you want to flip it. Tons of value across the board for fitting in whoever you think your gut says. Either way, targeting wide receivers or running backs here. So Lassiter, Chase for their target share. I mean, 6-8 targets a game. But how often does BYU pass? Let's see. I always thought they were running.
Arizona, decent pass D, but not
half and half. Yeah,
they're 8th worst on the slate. So, but in terms of rankings, they're not really.
Yeah, I mean, Lassiter getting some ownership. Implied 14.
I think that's fair. I mean, with 13 targets last game, I think that's again, that's just going to play into that.
I mean, both teams projected of 3 touchdowns plus, so
kind of a late hammer.
Late hammer, probably on prime time there. With the USC, Penn State, Notre Dame, Stanford, big total. Not any 3 there. I don't get excited about any of the BYU. Arizona McMillan's about the only one I would make a priority.
Yeah, so that was the last game, and as we say that about BYU, as we flip over to the stack tool, who rates out as the best stack on the slate? We have BYU. So if you all are new to the sheet, what this is it pulls out here to the right. If you scroll, you got the quarterback, wide receiver 1, 2, 3, 4 in terms of that's just rated by their projection, highest to lowest. You can see what are they, point per dollar, so on and so forth. Then what this is it looks at a double stack, which you of course don't have to do in college, but it gives you a good idea as to the overall team pricing with the projection. So you can see any of those combinations, how they rate out point per dollar or overall price or projection. And then what this best stack column does is it gives you the best combo point per dollar from that team in a double stack and rates that point per dollar. That's how we have it sorted. If you look at BYU is the number 1, and that combo is Lassiter plus Chase Roberts with Retzloff. So very slightly. The top 4 are really close together. You've got Louisville with Shuck, Brooks, and Lacey. I knew that one would be up there. Georgia Tech, I knew that one would be up there. You got King with the 2 fairly cheap receivers that we talked about.
That's my favorite one.
Pitt, Kenny Johnson, and Poppy Williams is kind of interesting, but I don't know that I'll get there. So, any of these are what is your favorite low-ish on stack here?
Georgia Tech. Like the place there. Let's look at ownership here.
They'll get some, but
oh yeah, they're gonna get a little bit for sure. A lot higher than I thought.
I think the interesting one is that Cincy stack that we briefly touched on. I mean, I don't want to tie my wagons to that. If you're playing, single entry, I don't know that I would get there. But if you're playing a 20 max, I would want some exposure to that Cincy. We talked about UCF likes to kind of sit back on the pass rush, or you're not really going to be worried about it at least. And then you got Sorsby, who's not getting much ownership, and Royer is, but Henderson isn't. I mean, you could double stack that up and then play Jefferson or Harvey on the other side. I think that's interesting. And they rate out pretty well, Henderson and Royer, just below that top tier.
Definitely. Man.
Carolina rates out all right on the other side. McCollum and Nesbitt, like we talked about.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be a slate that I'm probably more than likely not going to have any double stacks, at least in single entry, unless it's I go full on Georgia Tech UNC game stack. If I have a double stack, it's probably going to be a game stack and just hope it shoots out big time.
Do we just keep rolling? Keep rolling the squad with Pitt, or?
Yeah, maybe. So Josh says, is there a site shows fantasy points allowed at each position? I don't think for college. Do you know of any that do that? I mean, like our sheet for NFL pulls in the DVP stuff we have for, of course, NBA and NFL, but I don't know of any that breaks that for college football. I've looked into Pro Football Focus. They don't have anything like that. Yeah, I don't think so.
Not at all. If you find one, let us know.
Yeah, I would love to add that into the sheet, actually. Yeah, that would be nice. Anything else you got here? You got any more thoughts? I think we've covered it pretty well.
No, I don't think so. Lock in Malik Rutherford going for 2 touchdowns and 120 tomorrow.
I like it. Now I'll give my favorite little bit under-owned play. Wow, he's getting like 0 owned, which I can't believe that will hold. But in the same game, Nate McCollum, we talked about him a little more right before the show than we probably did on the show. But I don't know the whole story. I haven't looked into it. I just kind of noticed it looking at numbers. But he was getting like no targets early in the year. And I think it might have been involved with injury and things. But if you look at North Carolina here, I'm zooming in on them for us to look at it. On the other side of the game of the Georgia Tech team that we like a lot, McCollum had 13 targets in their last week's game after he hadn't had more than 2 all year. And he was good for them last year. I mean, this isn't just completely out of the blue. How in the heck did this guy get 13 targets? It's surprising, but it's not like, wow, I've never even heard of this guy and he got 13 targets. He was one of their top receivers last year. So I really like him under 5K at no ownership to be a run back. So I think he's going to be I could see throwing him into a single entry and hope that target share continues here this week. I do want to look into a little more and see, am I right about he was nursing an injury early in the year? That'd make me feel a little bit better. But either way, I don't think a guy gets 13 targets and then just drops back to 2. I don't think that's in the cards. So if he can get six to 8 targets, I mean, I'm happy with that. And he pairs really well with the Georgia Tech pass game that we talked about. So that's where I would go. Same game. We really like that one.
For sure, man.
All right. Like I said, I'll have ranks up late tonight, early in the morning. We'll have everything up as well for the night and late night slate. Good luck to everybody this week, week 7. We will be back for next week, hopefully again on Friday night, as long as life doesn't get in the way. And we'll just keep plowing through the rest of the year. It's going to be a good weekend. Enjoy it. Hope to see everybody in the Discord some point between now and tomorrow. Peace.
Taters.